choose just to use the evolution. There are certain cards that we're going to talk about today that, like I said, we're not going to be including the evolutions in this, but the Zap is one of those where the Evo Zap is really, really good, but the regular Zap, I'm going to give it like a C. Honestly, it's not really amazing, but it's not particularly in a great spot for the meta right now. Like I said, people just use it for the evolution, and there are better spells. I love using a little bit of spoiler, but I think the Log way better to use than the Zap. Even arrows, if you want a small spell, it's usually not the Zap. Even a Rage, sometimes I'd prefer over the Zap. The Knight is another really good card. I'm throwing it up into A. I'm kind of considering putting it into S, but I won't. Actually, yeah, I am going to throw it into S. I think it's just one of the best, if not the best, mini tank you can use in the game. There are others that fill its role pretty well, however. The Knight is used a lot in today's meta. You see it in Log Bait, you see it in Mortar decks. I love using the Knight in Mortar decks. Goblin Drill, there's a bunch of different variants of certain decks that use the Knight, and I think it's just probably it's just a 3 elixir mini tank that has a ton of health and does a decent amount of damage, and does enough damage on units, you know what I mean? So, yeah, the Knight, I'm honestly considering throwing down to A, because I feel like a mini tank, you know what, I am going to keep it an S, because like I said, for its elixir and for its damage output and everything, I think it's probably one of the best in its class. The Archers are up next, and I think this is another one of those C tier, maybe even D tier units. It's another one of those cards that only gets used for the evolution. The Archer's Evo, I think I rated it in my my last tier list video as like one of the higher evolutions, maybe an A or an S, but the Archers themselves, honestly, like a C or a D. I'm gonna keep them in C just because you do see them in a couple different decks. You see them in the E-Golem decks. A lot of people use Archers in those. Expo, there's some Mortar decks that uses them, and yeah, but again, it's just one of those cards that you only use if you want to use its evolution. Minions, it's another, I think, one of those like C or D cards. I think Minions could be could be a good candidate for like something that could use an evolution. I'm not too sure what the next Evo is going to be, but like Minions could use a little bit of love. Sometimes you see Minions in certain bait decks and even like Expo and Giant beatdown decks, but honestly, I'll keep it in C, maybe even B. It's just they get countered very easily, and I don't know. It's hard to get value with, maybe not hard to get value with Minions, but I don't know. It's just okay. It's nothing really that special. Arrows, I'm honestly gonna throw. I think after the recent Radius nerf, it's an A, but before it's an S. I think it's just one of the better spells that you can run in the game at the moment. Counters Firecracker, counters, Dark Goblins, Minions. It just counters a lot of different stuff in the arrows. You see a lot of people are switching over to this spell at the moment, and yeah, man, I just think I'm really considering throwing it to S, but I think after the recent Radius nerf, you just can't quite get every single thing that you want to get. decks. A lot of like P.E.K.K.A's kind of been revitalized. Boss Bandit is everywhere in a lot of different decks, and it just is so good against the mortar. And yeah, it struggles against a lot of different archetypes, even like Hog EQ and Royal Hogs EQ, like just completely counters the mortar. But yeah, it's not in the best spot right now, and I'm struggling to push Ultimate Champion with this card, and so for that reason I'm throwing it into C tier. Although it's a C tier card, it will always have a special place in my heart, both in the game. Well, actually, I don't know why I said both. It's just in the game. I don't know. I'm not parasocial with the mortar or anything. But either ways, Barbs. I'm honestly gonna throw this into like a D tier. This card is not in a great spot either. I think in the meta, you saw it before in a lot of Lava Hound archetypes. It even used to be in RG decks, but a lot of those decks have substituted the barbarians out with other things that just do the job better. Lava Hound switched over to, I think, even like the Valkyrie for like a ground troop, and even like certain goblins and stuff like that. And then RG switched over to the monk. Just a way better 5 elixir card that will get you way more bang for your buck. And so yeah, the Barbs, even the evolution isn't really in a great spot right now, and I wouldn't say it's completely useless in the F tier, but yeah, I'm gonna definitely say it's a B. What I would say is useless and in the F tier is the Minion Horde. Dude, it's 9 times out of 10 when you slap this card down, you're not getting any value out of the Minion Horde. Minions, I think, are better because it's a 3 elixir card, but a 5 elixir card that can get countered by a giant snowball or a zap or an arrows, which basically guarantees a negative elixir trade. It's bad. It's bad in Minion Horde, and I don't ever see ever on the ladder. So yeah, I think certain cards that are extinct basically in top ladder, they have to go into F tier. What has kind of got revitalized recently because of the Eva Witch is the Tombstone. I'm gonna put this into either B or A. I think B is deserving of it. Like I said, because of the Eva Witch, it's gotten a little bit better in the meta, and you do see certain decks like RGs and Lava Hound putting the Tombstone back into decks to supply, even like graveyard decks, to supply the Eva Witch with more skeletons to heal her back up. And yeah, the Tombstone's in a good spot, I think. I'm even considering it putting it into A, but like I'm just gonna say B because it is a little bit more situational on the deck that you're using. The Musketeer, again, it's another card. I wouldn't say it's got a really good evolution, but it's got a decent evolution. However, the regular card, I'll put at like, it's definitely one of these mid-tier cards. I might put it into, oh, this is tough actually. I personally really like the Muskie, but I think it does get, like, you only see it in very certain situational decks. I'll keep it in C. Yeah, you don't really see the Musketeer too often anymore. Like, it's in 2.6. There are mortar decks that use the Musketeer, and honestly, that's about it. I can't really think of many others. Like, maybe certain beatdown decks use the Musketeer as well, but I'll keep it in C. Just an okay ranged card. You know, it's nothing too special. The Valkyrie, I'm gonna give her you see a lot of top players using Hockey Q to counter the current meta, and it's working really, really well. So Hog Rider, for those of you who are just starting out Clash Royale, or looking for decks, maybe some kind of deck that you want to try and push into top ladder with, or just push through the trophy road, use a Hog Rider deck. I'm telling you, Hog is in a really good spot right now. What isn't in a good spot is Mini P.E.K.K.A. I'm gonna give it a D tier, honestly. It's just not like there are certain decks that it's good against, but when's the last time you saw someone using a Mini P.E.K.K.A. in top ladder? Wouldn't say it's completely useless, because obviously it's good against a lot of certain beatdown decks, and even honestly sometimes pretty good against the boss bandit and stuff like that. But it's just a card that's pretty easy to counter, and yeah, it's just not the greatest. Fireball, I'm honestly gonna give this our first spell with an S tier. I think the Fireball is so good right now, and a lot of I honestly am kind of surprised. There are a lot of people using it, but I feel like I'd expect to see it more. Like, I've seen Royal Giant use it, Expo uses it, Mortar decks use it, Goblin Drill, a lot of Goblin Drill decks even use the Fireball. You see the Fireball in a lot of different decks, and it just counters a lot of different stuff, and that's the reason people are using it as their big spell. So yeah, it's really solid. I think it's in a really good spot. I personally love using the Fireball. It's like one of the first cards I ever maxed out in the game, so yeah, Fireball, pretty solid card. Bomb Tower, honestly, I'm giving this like either a B or an A tier. So would I use it over the Tesla? You know what, I would. I'm gonna pop it into A. Like the Bomb Tower, I feel like Royal Hogs is one of those decks that you see a lot in top ladder, and it just like perfectly counters Royal Hogs. Also good against beatdown, depending on the beatdown deck you go up against. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's pretty dead, but yeah, good against a lot of different stuff. You see it every now and then in certain decks. I've used it with Goblin Drill decks and stuff like that, but yeah, Bomb Tower, very solid defense. Giant, I'm honestly gonna give an A. There are a lot of Giant Graveyard and Giant Witch decks that have come into the meta because of the Evo Witch, and I think the Giant's in another one of those spots where it's just in a good spot. The Giant, even like certain decks like Giant Bridge Spam, where you got like the Giant, the Prince, the Boss Bandit, Royal Ghost, stuff like that, in these Giant decks. And yeah, I think that's another win condition that I'd say is in a strong spot in the meta at the moment. The Wizard is just an F tier. Do you guys genuinely, when's the last time you've seen the Wizard get used in a deck in top ladder? I think if you're using the Wizard, you're using it for the evolution, but even the evolution is bad. It's a bad card. It's just not very good. Like, oh, it has a shield. Bro, you can lock the shield down. It's not a good card. I don't know why people use this. It's been bad for a long time, and yeah, Clash or Supercell needs to show the Wizard a little bit of love and give it some buffs or some kind of rework, because there's just way better cards that fit its role. Yeah, Wizard is in a bad spot. Inferno Tower, I wouldn't say is in a bad spot. I think it's another one of those A or B tier. I'll put it in B. I feel like it has been better in the past, but it is still a good spot. I think I'd rather run the Bomb Tower just for the extra 1 elixir. However, obviously, Inferno Tower, actually, you know what, I'm actually going to bump it up into A, only because Inferno Tower is really good, obviously against beatdown, but it's super good against, like, Splash Yard, which is one of those deck archetypes that is just really good at the moment, where you see, like, the Bowler, Evo Executioner, even the Evo Witch. Obviously, this Inferno Tower would struggle against the Witch, but it's just so good at melting those Bowlers down and Baby Dragons and all kinds of different tanks that you do see. And yeah, I'll keep it in A, because yeah, for certain decks it is absolutely wonderful. Goblin Hut, I think this card is one of the best rework decks. You're seeing the Goblin Hut in now. I've seen it in, there's a really good Hog EQ deck that Mohammed Light is using at the moment. I've seen this in Beatdown, Goblin Drill, Graveyard decks, Eagle decks. I've seen this get played. It is such a good card. I don't know if they're going to maybe nerf it a little bit soon because of how dominant it seems to be and how viable it really is in the current meta. But yeah, it is so good. The rework that they made it so that it only spawns goblins once troops are near it. Absolutely amazing. I think it's probably the best building you can use at the moment in the game. Next up is the Rocket. Honestly, I'm considering like a B tier for the Rocket because there is a certain 6 elixir card that, spell I should say, that I would rather over the Rocket. However, this is another card that I wouldn't rate any lower than a B because it does have a spot in the meta. You do see it in certain expo decks, Lock Bait, obviously, using the Rocket a lot of times, and yeah, it's a card that can either be very solid and gets you a lot of value a lot of the time, and can be used to chip down your opponent's tower while trying to get value. However, this is one of those cards I think that can either be very, very good or also just sit in your deck the whole game and maybe use it once or twice. And so, yeah, I'll give it a B just because it's situationally very good, but situationally pretty garbage. Elixir Pump, I'm gonna put it into D. I wouldn't say it's completely useless because there is every now and then you go up against a deck that doesn't have a big spell, but a lot of the times people are using big spells like the Fireball, like the Rocket, like the Lightning, and the Pump just gets absolutely demolished. Or even the Earthquake, where you can actually demolish via a Pump for a positive elixir trade, which is crazy. But yeah, there's not many decks using the Elixir Pump at the moment. I actually the other day went up against a classic like giant battle ram Three Musketeers deck that used the Pump, and it was kind of hilarious. Just going up against a very old deck like that, and I think I'm pretty sure I absolutely obliterated the guy. But yeah, the Pump, they nerfed it a while ago. I remember when like decks like that, like the Giant, the Three Musketeers, the Battle Ram, all cards like that using the Elixir Pump were running rampant on ladder, and it was absolutely broken. But yeah, not as good as it used to be. The Barbud, I really just want to give it an S tier for the memes, but it's a bad card at the moment. It gets countered very easily, and honestly, I hope Supercell does some kind of rework like they did with the Goblin Hut on spawners like the Barbud and even the Furnace. Let's go to just cheats and go down to the Furnace because it's another F tier spawner. These cards have absolutely zero place in the meta at the moment. You never, ever, 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 ever see them in top ladder. I remember there was a certain point where I tried to get the Barbud to work in top ladder with the Graveyard, because if you think about it logistically, you got the Barbud as a defense. You can use it as a defense maybe against a Hog Rider or a Giant or whatever, and then the Barbs would come down the lane. You can maybe get a Graveyard going with the Barbud. I thought that was a pretty cool concept, but obviously the building is just way too weak in order to get value out of it a lot of the time. So yeah, it's just a bad card, and so is the Furnace too. Like, buildings are way too weak and they just don't get enough value a lot of the time. Mirror, another F tier card. Honestly, yeah, it's another F tier card. It's another, honestly, the Mirror only goes into the meta and is only ever really, really good when Clash Royale releases a broken card. If you think back to when like cards like the Electro Giant were first released, or even the Goblin Machine were first released, people were using the Mirror with those cards its place in certain decks. Eagle, I mean, you see it all the time. You used to see it in, I think you used to see the Rage even in like RG decks and stuff like that. And there are giant decks actually that use the Rage still, but yeah, I think it's in a good spot. It's just a pretty solid small spell that can counter, you know, like skeletons and bats and stuff like that, and that's why you do still see the Rage every now and then. The Scar Me, I'll put it into D, not quite F, but D. There are certain, like, I feel like the Scar Me, you're starting to see a little bit of uptick in playtime with it because of the Evo Witch, and like the more skeletons the better, so why not just go for the skeleton army? But it's still just a card that, like, if you wanted to use a 3 elixir card that has skeletons, just use the Tombstone. Honestly, it's just not a great 3 elixir swarm card. There are better options, and yeah, the Scarmy's just not in the best spot. It hasn't been for a long time. The Goblin Barrel, I'm just gonna throw this into A. It's another one of those really, really good win conditions that, I mean, people have been playing forever. I mean, Logbait has been an archetype literally forever, literally since the dawn of Clash Royale, honestly. And so, yeah, the Goblin Barrel has a fantastic Evo, probably one of the better evolutions in the game, and it's still just a very good win condition. You see so many people playing the Goblin Barrel along with like certain Logbait decks a lot of the time. So yeah, very good spot, the Goblin Barrel. Baby Dragon, I'll give this like a C. This used to be very popular in Splash Yard and even like Golem beatdown decks. You saw the Baby Dragon a lot in decks like that, but I feel like even those decks, you started to see them substitute the Baby Dragon with other stuff like the Executioner, the Electro Dragon, other like kind of mini air or mini tanks that do the job just a little bit better. And honestly, just saying that and thinking about it out loud, I'm considering throwing it down to D, but I'm gonna keep it at C. I think it's like probably one of the weaker C tier cards we'll have, but it does have its place in certain decks. But it's definitely been in better spots, the Baby Dragon, in terms of the meta. The Freeze, it's another one of those cards that is very situationally good. It's like you can only catch your opponent off guard with the Freeze one time in the match, and that's the first time you play it. After that, it's just gonna be expected. And you know, 4 elixir for Freeze, it's tough because it can either win you the game or like lose you the game. If you play the Freeze at an inopportune time, you just make a huge counter push for your opponent. That's because, you know, you've allowed them to have all their troops stay in one spot and garner some elixir back. But it can win you the game if you get like a Lumberloon Freeze combination or something. But honestly, I'm gonna give it like a D. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a D. There's certain decks that I've seen use the Freeze in top ladder, but I don't know, a card like that, it's just gonna be hard to get really good value out of it a lot of the time. The Witch, so like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not gonna take into account the evolutions, just the card itself. The Witch itself is like a D tier card. When did you see the Witch ever get played in top ladder? Never is the answer. Since Evo Witch was thrown in, it became, I mean, it's just got a broken evolution, man. They need to nerf it again. I swear to God, it needs to get nerfed again. But yeah, the Evo Witch is insane. The Witch itself, honestly not good. Like I said, there are cards that get used in its place. Way better if you know, just you're taking the Witch out, or if you're taking the Evo Witch out of the picture. But yeah, the Evo Witch has definitely made this card into an S tier card, which makes a lot of people use it. But the Witch itself, D tier. The Prince, I'm just gonna put in A, and if it was last season, I'd throw it into S and would be saying that the card needs a nerf. I still think it maybe needs a little bit of looking at, but the Prince is just a really strong card. there's decks that use the balloon, obviously Lava Loon and Lumber Loon, but I haven't honestly been seeing too many people in like top players using the balloon too much. Even like certain Lava Hound players in the top decks aren't even using the balloon. Like obviously there are a lot of Lava Loon players that still use the balloon, but I've seen some Lava Hound decks up in the top ranks that are substituting the balloon with other cards. Like you'll see Flying Machine and Baby Dragon in those decks, and even like Inferno Dragon stuff, to try and get like damage other ways other than the balloon. But I'll say it's an A tier because in those decks it is a monster, especially if you don't have a good counter for air. And I feel like honestly air decks are always so good in the meta, no matter what cards get released or what tweaks get changed, the balance changes, because there are times where people just kind of forget to throw in air defense in their decks, and so it just makes balloon and Lava Hound always very good. Giant Skeleton, yeah, I mean it's another F or even like a D. I'll concede and put it up into, nah, I'm putting it to F, bro. Giant Skeleton never gets used, and it's for good reason. 6 elixir for a troop that really doesn't do a whole lot of damage and is like practically impossible to get the big bomb to your opponent's tower. Maybe not practically impossible, but it is very difficult to get a lot of value out of the Giant Skeleton bomb and even get it on the opponent's tower. And so yeah, it's an F tier, bro, and no one ever uses the Giant Skeleton for good reason. Lightning, I'm honestly gonna give it, it's gonna be another S tier spell. The Lightning and the Fireball, I think, are both in very good spots in the meta right now. You're seeing it a lot in RG decks. You see it in Giant Beatdown. You see it in I said Royal Giant. Did I say Royal Giant? I said either Lava Hound or Royal Giant as the first one. Either way, Royal Giant, Lava Hound, Giant Beatdown are the main decks you see Lightning in. Even some other archetypes use it, and I think for good reasons. It just gets a lot of value at the moment, and yeah, Lightning is just a really, really good spot, especially with the Evo Witch running rampant. I actually had a mortar deck that I was trying to concoct at the beginning of the season that used the Lightning, which is kind of uncommon in mortar decks, but I had to throw it in because the Witch was so good at the moment. And yeah, Lightning, very good spell. Expo, I think, is another one of those win conditions. I feel like I've got a lot of win conditions in the top tiers here, but don't worry, we are going to expose some win conditions very, very soon, hopefully. But yeah, Expo is also an A tier. Actually, I feel like you're not really seeing Expo as much at the moment because the meta is very heavy. I might bump it down to B, but with the recent buff that the Expo got, where it does just a tiny little bit more damage, and like I feel like it was a buff that wasn't even really announced, but yeah, it got like a kind of a buff, I think, in the last season, which just does a little bit more damage per hit. But I'm gonna bump it down to B because, like I said, the meta very much is against the Expo at the moment. You're seeing a lot of very heavy decks, a lot of very heavy decks, like the that Royal Giant deck with the Monk and the Hunter is just so freaking annoying. And even like EQ decks, stuff like that, that is just not very good for the Expo. So yeah, I'm gonna bump it down to B. I do think it is the better Siege card. Like if you're gonna run a Siege deck in top ladder, I think you run Expo, but yeah, it's not in the best. I think Siege is not in a good spot at the moment, and for better or for worse, a lot of people love that, but yeah, we'll put it to B tier. The P.E.K.K.A. See, the P.E.K.K.A, you really only see it in 2 different types of decks, and that's P.E.K.K.A Bridge Spam and P.E.K.K.A Goblin Giant using the Royal Chef as your tower troop. And I think after they buffed the Evo P.E.K.K.A, it did make it a little bit better, but it's just not, it's still just not amazing. I'm gonna give the P.E.K.K.A, I'm gonna give it a C, honestly. I just don't think the P.E.K.K.A is in a great spot in the meta at the moment. You don't really see too many people using P.E.K.K.A currently. There have been metas where the P.E.K.K.A has been absolutely unreal, but yeah, I don't know, I don't think the P.E.K.K.A is in the greatest it's just a cool card. It has a really cool aura to it. But yeah, I think honestly I'll bump it up to B. I think it's better than these cards that I've got here in C. So yeah, I think it's deserving of a little bit more, maybe just a B. The Golem, bro, it's gotta be like a. This is probably one of those win conditions that I'm gonna throw into like a C or a D. I'll keep it in C because there are times where you can catch opponents off guard with a really heavy Golem deck. But I don't know, man. I just don't think Golem is in a good spot, and it hasn't been for a long time. I think the last time it was very viable was like 2022 when, or maybe 2021 or 2022 when Golem Night Witch and stuff like that were everywhere. And then a lot of the cards that was supported the Golem got nerfed and stuff like that. And yeah, it's like a C tier win condition at the moment. You don't really see a lot of people running Golem. A lot of top players running Golem. Royal Giant, on the other hand, is everywhere, and it's another S tier win condition, bro. The Royal freaking Giant is so annoying. If I have to go up against one more Royal Giant deck in a Grand Challenger top ladder, I might punch my monitor, bro. It is just way too good, and I think they're either gonna do one of two things, like soon with the Royal Giant. They're either gonna nerf it straight up, or they're gonna nerf the cards that support it, like the Monk, like the Hunter, like the Fisherman. Those three cards, they'll probably end up nerfing a little bit instead of nerfing the Royal Giant itself to make those decks a little bit less viable, because this is just too good. It's just too good, the Royal Giant at the moment. Three Musketeers is an F tier, bro. Anyone that's trying to use Three Musketeers in like top ladder, top gameplay, it's just doing it for the nostalgia. Honestly, the Three Musketeers used to be insane way back in the day, like when the Elixir Pump was really good. But at the moment, when people are using stuff like Lightning and Fireball, the Three Muskies are just useless, bro. It's way too easy to get positive Elixir trades on the Three Muskies right now, and yeah, it's an F tier. Any card that's either really, really bad or just way too easy to get positive Elixir trades on, go into F tier, as you've seen by the Minion Horde and the Three Muskies. So yeah, F tier for sure. Dark Prince, I'll say it's like another C tier card, honestly. Like, they're better. I think there's just better mini tanks that get what the Dark Prince does, that like do a little bit better at his job. I'd rather have the Valkyrie if you're even just gonna do another 4 elixir mini tank, or the Knight. But you see the Dark Prince in like double Prince decks, like giant double Prince, maybe some Goblin drill decks, but honestly outside of that I don't really see the Dark Prince too often. But I wouldn't say it's like really, really bad. Like some of these cards, it's still a pretty decent card, it's just not really in the best spot in the meta at the moment. The Poison, I'll give this an A. Wouldn't quite put it in Fireball range, but the Poison still gets used a lot. You see it in a lot of Graveyard, you see it in a lot of Goblin Drill. There's giant beatdown decks that use it. So yeah, the Poison, very, very solid spell, and I use it pretty often in certain decks as well, so it's pretty good. The Princess, this might be controversial. I'm considering it putting into C tier because, like, honestly, you only see the Princess in log bait, and if you're only seeing a card in one type of deck, it's not that good of a card. I mean, it's really, really good in log bait, but like, legitimately, the Princess is only used in combination with cards like the Goblin Barrel, the Goblin Gang, and like Dark Goblin, stuff like that. It's the only deck you see the Princess in, and so yeah, like, I guess it is a good card in log bait, but I'm just gonna throw it into C because yeah, it's only used in one meta and like one deck, and I feel like in order for it to be anything above a C, you gotta see it in a lot of different decks. Like, there's a lot of, or either in a lot of different decks, or a lot of like top players using log bait, or whatever deck you're talking about, whatever card you're talking about. And I feel like log bait in the current meta Princess is only used in that one deck. I'm considering maybe throwing it into B because I feel like some people will be mad about me throwing it into C. And I honestly think it's a C tier card though, bro. Like I said, you only see it in one deck, and I don't know. I'm gonna leave it there. Ice Wizard. Oh boy, Ice Wizard's a tough one actually. It's like another mid-tier card. I'll give it. Honestly, that's another like probably C. It's kind of devastating to see these two cards next to each other, especially because I'm pretty sure they're the first legendaries that got introduced into the game. But I don't know. I don't really see the Ice Wizard used too often. I'm trying to think of like what decks use it. There's certain graveyard decks that maybe use it. What uses the Ice Wizard? I actually don't even know. Maybe certain beatdown decks, but yeah, I'll say it's a C. It's actually pretty nice that it has the splash ability when it spawns in, like the E-Wiz does, but it just doesn't do quite as much damage, but it does counter stuff like the bats and the skeletons stuff, so yeah, I'll give it a C tier. It's just not the greatest spot. The Fire Spirit, honestly, I think it's another C, like 3 back-to-back C tier cards, but there's just better, like, I think there's not only better spirits, but there's also better options if you want some kind of one elixir, like, cycle card. Honestly, I'm gonna throw it into, actually no, I'll keep it in C, because I can't think of another one elixir card that's worse than the Fire Spirit, but yeah, the only deck I've seen recently with the Fire Spirit is like some like Goblin Drill cycle decks that uses it, and yeah, it's just in a pretty mid spot in the meta at the moment. There's better one elixir cards if you're looking for some kind of cycle. The Guards, I'm honestly gonna put it into A. It's another like 3 elixir card that is actually really good in the meta at the moment, and I really like the Guards. I think it still even after like the recent nerf that it got where it doesn't do quite as much damage, I think they're still very, very solid. You see them in a lot of different archetypes still, and that's how you know a card is good. If you're seeing it in multiple different decks, it's in a healthy spot. I see it in Lava Hound. I see it in Goblin Drill. I keep saying Goblin Drill. Even like certain beatdown decks, like I've seen the Giant get paired up with Guards a lot, just as a really good defensive card, and so that's how you know a card is in a really healthy spot. The Miner, I'm gonna put it into B tier. The Miner's honestly just, I remember when Miner Control used to be really, really good. I'm honestly even considering putting it into C. I'll keep it at B though, because there are Miner Poison decks that are really good, but I remember Miner Control, Miner Poison used to be amazing, but they nerfed the Miner into the grave a couple years ago, making it not do as much damage as it used to, and so it just doesn't chip quite as good as it used to, and so yeah, there are still people that do use the Miner, but I just don't think it's as good as it once was, and so for that it's a B tier like win condition in my opinion. Sparky, it's another one of those decks, or another one of those cards you only see in one specific deck, and that is Goblin Giant. I'm gonna put it in D, bro. Like, I was considering throwing the Princess a little bit lower because of that, one stipulation. Sparky only getting used in one deck, and that's Goblin Giant. And yeah, I mean, outside of that, it's not used, right? So Sparky just not in a good spot. I would love though to see some kind of evolution for the Sparky. I don't know what that would entail. I don't know if it would make it broken to have an evolution for a card like this, but I think it'd be sick. I think the Sparky needs a little bit of love, and it's just a cool card. I remember the first time I unlocked the Sparky and started using it, I remember feeling so cool using this card, but either way, that's neither here nor there. even though the Goblin Hut is pretty solid, it's like one of the few cards that is really, really good against the Lava Hound. However, it's still, the Lava Hound is just still, I think, an S tier win condition in my opinion. Ice Spirit, I think, is the best one elixir card in game. I know it's kind of crazy to say, but I mean, it's got one of the better evolutions, but like I said, we're not going to talk about the evolutions. I think you just see it in so many different decks. You see it in, Royal Hogs. You see it in just regular Hog. I've seen Royal Giant run it. It does run the Electro Spirit every, most of the time, but I have seen the Royal Giant use it, and even Lava Hound decks use it. It's just a really good one elixir card that's been in the meta for a long time, and I don't know, it's solid, man. I really like the Ice Spirit. I think it's always gonna be one of the better one elixir cards, unless they do something to nerf it or whatever. But yeah, Ice Spirit, very, very good. The Bowler, I'm gonna give an A. Honestly, the Bowler is either an A or an S tier. I think it's one of those cards I'd consider putting into S tier, just because honestly, you know what, I am gonna put it into S tier. It's another really good mini tank that you see in a lot of different decks, and it's sometimes just so annoying to deal with. I see this card in Electro Giant, you see it in Graveyard, obviously. I've even seen it in like certain beatdown decks with the Giant and other stuff like that. But yeah, the Bowler is a really good spot in the meta at the moment, and it's just solid. It counters so much, and it's so spell resistant. Like a lightning won't take it out, neither will a rocket. It is very good in the meta at the moment. I think the Bowler is just, it's great. It's a really good card. Pairing that with the Tornado and stuff is just chef's kiss. That's a really good 5 elixir support card. Oh, another S tier I think we're gonna have here in the log. I mean, this card, the spell is like crucial in a lot of different decks, and yeah, like the log is just fantastic, bro. The log is fantastic. Probably, in my opinion, the best like small spell you can have in the game. And it, like, if you go up against a log bait deck without the log, good luck. If you don't have some kind of small spell that like takes out the Goblin Barrel instantly, yeah, just good luck, bro. The log is super crucial in a lot of decks, and you see the log in all kinds of decks, not even just like even off meta decks use the log a lot. So yeah, I think the best 2 elixir spell for sure. Lumberjack is interesting because, again, it's another one of those cards that you use for the evolution. The evolution's pretty solid. I'm gonna give it like a B tier, maybe even a C tier. I'm considering. I'll give it a B tier. It pairs up with the balloon really well. You see in giant beatdown decks, it's pretty good. Honestly, I like the Lumberjack. I think it's just a really cool card in general as well. Ice Golem, I'm honestly gonna give this an A, which might be a little bit surprising, but I think you can get a lot of value out of the Ice Golem a lot of the time. It's obviously good as a little mini tank you can throw in front of a Hog Rider or stuff like that, but also just having the Ice Golem to be able to like kite like a P.E.K.K.A or something, or even like a mini tank like a Valkyrie or a Knight or something, whatever it is. Just having the ability to kite something with something as cheap as 2 elixir and get a ton of value out of it. I think it's a really good mini tank. Ice Golem, very, very solid. I love the Ice Golem. Mega Minion, I think is like a C or a D. I think I'll give it a D because I'd rather have the minions over the Mega Minion, and you really only see Mega Minion in beatdown with the Giant and the Golem, but Mega Minion I don't think is in a great spot in the meta at the moment. I'm trying to speed this up a little bit, by the way, guys, because I just realized I've been already recording for like 45 minutes, and we're not even like, I don't even think we're like we are halfway through, but there's still so many cards left, and I kind of want to do the Crown Towers as well. We're not going to do the evolutions or any of the special cards, but there's still so much we got to get through, so I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit. Drag, I'll put in C. It's pretty easy to counter the Inferno Dragon, in my opinion. Obviously, you got the sap to reset, barbs, bro. It's, I mean, I don't think it really needs much of an explanation. I think it's pretty easy to counter these a lot of the time, and you only really see these in like troll, like E-barbs, rage decks that are like just funny to use. And so, yeah, E-barbs, I'm gonna give it a D. It's a lot of the times easy to get a positive elixir trait against these things. Tornado, honestly, I think is like, I think it's in the still. It's honestly, I'm gonna put it into A. I think I would have had it in S tier last season, but now that it can't kill spirit goblins, you have to be a little bit more mindful of the placement and the timing of this tornado. It's very good, however. This spell is one of those cards that can really bail you out of like tough situations, and obviously you can get King Tower activation with it and stuff. So yeah, it's a really, really good spell. Would consider throwing it into S. And I think it was an S tier card last season when it was a little bit better with the damage, but after the nerf, it's an A. It's still a very strong spell, but not quite as good as it used to be. Clone, I think it's an F, bro. I remember there was a Lava Hound clone deck that was going around last season that ended up being kind of good, but that was like the only time I'd seen the clone in like a meta deck in ages, and now you don't see it anymore. And so yeah, it's an F tier card, bro. People try to make it work every now and then, but unfortunately the clone just doesn't have like the greatest spot in the meta. E-Wiz, I think, is like, honestly, I'm gonna give it an A. There's like certain decks that are really strong with E-Wiz, and I think after the buff where it can kill spirits in one shot, it made it very, very solid. Obviously you see it in, there are like certain control decks that use the E-Wiz, but mainly you're gonna see it in like P.E.K.K.A. Bridge spam. You're gonna see it in certain beatdown decks with the giant and the poison, stuff like that. I think it's in a pretty healthy spot. I really like the E-Wiz, and I think it's a very good legendary. Goblin Gang, I'm gonna put in, I'm gonna put it in B. I think the better 3 elixir card at the moment, if you are looking for some kind of 3 elixir, is like swarm card for defense. You're gonna use the guards most of the time, but I still think the Goblin Gang is a good substitution if you're using log baity kind of decks or just some kind of bait-ish type of archetype. And yeah, I think the Goblin Gang can still be pretty good, but I think the 3 elixir card that's reigning supreme at the moment are the guards. Dark Goblin, I'm gonna give it a C, honestly. Again, you see it in long bait and even some like Goblin Drill decks, but that's about it. I think the evolution is actually really underrated for the Dark Goblin. It can be pretty solid, but you don't really see it getting too much love outside of those archetypes, and I think it can be good against certain decks, but there are certain decks where if you're going up against somebody that has like an arrows or a log or even cards that are just that counter the Dark Goblin pretty easily, it's hard to get some kind of value out of them. But if you're using this against like a Lava Hound player, it's golden, and you can cycle back to it pretty fast depending on the deck that you're using. So yeah, Dark Goblin, it's okay. It's nothing amazing, but it's okay. I think C tier kind of conveys that. Battle Ram, I'll give, I think it's another maybe like C tier win condition at the moment. I wouldn't say it's bad, but I think like you only see it in P.E.K.K.A. Bridge spam or Bridge spam decks, and I just don't think Bridge spam is in the best spot at the moment. I might bump it up into B because I do think it's better than the Mortar and the Golem at the moment if we're talking win conditions, but it's been in better spots. The Battle Ram, it's still a pretty good card, and I don't think the evolution is the greatest, but the card itself is still pretty solid, and in Bridge spam it is still a pretty good card to use. I think I am considering throwing it back down to C just because there are like better win conditions. I think I'd rather bring an Expo deck than pick a Battle Ram Bridge spam, but I'll keep it in B for now. If it's really bugging me outside of its evolution, it's just not the best. I think there are better cards in its spot, like the Bowler. That would be really, really good if you didn't have its evolution. The Batsman is going to put into B or A. I'm considering putting it into B. I think the evolution is really, really good for the Bats. Probably one of the better ones, I think, as well. But I think the Bats are a B tier card. You see it like exclusively in like Beatty decks. Like there's certain like mortar decks that use it with the Skeleton King, and even like certain like Eagle decks and like maybe minor control decks that use the Bats. But yeah, it's a B. I think it's a B. I'd consider even maybe putting it into A. I'm putting it into A. I think it's pretty easy to get value out of the Bats, like a lot of the time, unless your opponent's using a Rage or a Zap. But I really like the Bats. They're fun to use, and I think there's a lot of different decks that use it, and it's just a good cycle card. 2 elixir, air unit, which is pretty solid. Heal Spirit, I'm gonna put into D. This is the when I was talking about the Fire Spirit. This was what I was saying, where I think there is a 1 elixir card that is worse than the Fire Spirit, and that is the Heal Spirit. Doesn't have a very good spot in the meta. Literally no one uses it. So yeah, it's a D tier card for me. Just not the greatest. The Bandit, I think we're gonna put into. I'm gonna keep it in B as well. Maybe, yeah, I'll keep it in B. I'm starting to notice a lot of the Pekka Bridge spam cards we do have in the B tier. But yeah, like you only see you see Bandit in bridge spam, and that's it. However, it is very good in those bridge spam decks, so we'll keep it in B for that reason. And yeah, B for Bandit, I guess. Night Witch, like again, it's another one of those cards you only see in one archetype, and that is Golem Beatdown, whether it's the Golem or the Elixir Golem. And I think it's really good in those decks, but I think that's another like maybe B or C tier card. I'll keep it in B because for the same reason as the Bandit, it's good in those decks that the archetype is used in, like for the certain archetype it's used in, but outside of that, it's just not very useful in other situations. But yeah, Night Witch, this one of those cards where it was absolutely broken when it was first released. It used to have like the health of like a knight, and like it used to spawn bats like way more often, it was ridiculous when it was first released. Skeleton Barrel, it's like a secondary win condition kind of card. I'm gonna give it like a C. It's pretty easy to counter the Skelly Barrel if you have a small spell, which most decks do. And you see it in a lot of bait decks using like the Skeleton King. There's like a mortar deck that I love using the Skeleton Barrel in, but yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of okay. You know what I mean? It's not bad. It's not great, but it can get the job done in certain situations. And sometimes for like maybe not newer players, but like lower rated players in like Ultimate Champion stuff, sometimes it's hard for these guys to counter it. Maybe they'll mistime their log or mistime their arrows or something. Because of the Skelly Barrel, and yeah, it's a fun card. I like it, but it's not amazing. Flying Machine, I think it's another B. Honestly, you know what? I'm gonna give it an A because there are certain like I think the reason they did it was because there was a lot of bugs involving the shield of the can card, but the fact that they were just too lazy to try and fix those bugs and just made a rework to make it bad, kind of scummy on their part. They made one card super viable and nerfed another to the ground. So yeah, you're not really seeing too many cannon card users anymore, and for good reason. It's just not as good as it used to be. Mega Knight, boy, I honestly think it's like, I think it's a C tier card, bro. I genuinely, like, the Evo Mega Knight is super annoying and very good. But it's like the regular Mega Knight. There are cards that are very popular in the meta at the moment that counter it very well. The Boss Bandit is one of them, which just obliterates it. You see some P.E.K.K.A decks that get used, and obviously P.E.K.K.A is just so good against the Mega Knight. And like certain decks, you play this card that's very good against certain cards. You play this card and it gets countered super easily. So I think it's a C tier card, bro. Some mid-ladder menaces are gonna disagree with me and maybe say I'm dumb for putting it in C, but in top ladder, you really don't see this card get used very often. Zappies, I think it's another maybe C or B. I'll put it in C, only because, again, it's another one of those cards you only see in like one kind of archetype, and that is like Royal Hogs, Royal Recruits, and it is good in that specific archetype, but that's about it. It's really the only time you see the Zappies get used, so yeah, we'll keep him at C. It's just good for like those Fireball bait decks, but that's about it. It's got the reset potential, but outside of that, not the greatest. Bar Barrel, I think, is another B tier 2 elixir spell. It's good, but I'd rather have the log. There are certain decks that use the Bar Barrel. I think I've seen Goblin Drill decks, and I used to see it a lot in RG, but I feel like RG has kind of substituted the Bar Barrel out of those decks for the most part. So yeah, it's okay. It's good, but like, and you still see it every now and then. But there are other 2 elixir spells that get the job done a little bit better, like the log. And yeah, like the log. Actually, I think I'd even rather the rage sometimes over the Bar Barrel, but I think the Bar Barrel has its spot in the meta. Hunter, we're just gonna throw that into S tier. I mean, it's, even if you don't have the evolution, it is so good, bro. In Royal Giant, it's just a great support card to have in your deck. And yeah, man, the Hunter, I think, maybe needs a little bit of looking at. It's just a very, very strong card. You don't really see it in too many different archetypes, but like the archetypes that you see it in, like Royal Giant, and even some certain beatdown decks, it is just freaking unbelievable. It's such a good support 4 elixir card, and yeah, I think it has one of the better evolutions in the game. But aside from the evolution, I think it's still an S tier support card. Really, really good. Royal Ghost, I'll give an A. It's another really annoying 3 elixir card that is just like guaranteed that you need a response to it. And yeah, bro, it's an annoying offensive card used in a lot of bridge spam decks, obviously. But yeah, Royal Ghost, freaking annoying. I mean, I don't hate the card, but I think it's annoying to deal with a lot of the time. Magic Archer, I think, is another A tier ranged card. It's very, you see it in, I feel like I say this a lot, but you see it in a lot of different archetypes. Goblin Drill, certain beatdown decks, like control decks, love the Magic Archer as well. And yeah, I think it's also very solid. Bro, this card can honestly, you know what? I'm gonna throw it into S tier. This card can win you games sometimes. I've seen it even paired in some Hog Rider decks, but Magic Archer, I think, is really solid. And skilled players can make this card get you a lot of damage if you throw it at the bridge and line it up with something. It's very good. Rascals, I'm gonna put in D. I don't see this card ever get used. It used to get played in like log it's kind of a huge dip, but I think the reason I was putting it into A tier is because it's kind of gotten, like, the snowball evolution kind of got a buff recently, which made it kind of go back into the meta. You do see the snowball in a few different archetypes, and I think it's really, really good, but you're using it for the evo, and I think for that, it's got to go into C. Like, we have other cards that are in C tier that are used for that evolution, like the Zap and the Archers. I think it's fair to have the Snowball join it. I think it does basically the same job as the Zap, maybe a little bit better because it's got the knockback. But yeah, I think outside of the evolution, it wouldn't be in a really good spot in the meta if it weren't for that. Recruits will throw into S tier and move on. I hate seeing this card. I think it needs to get nerfed. I hate the recruits. I hate the recruits. I hate the recruits. Maybe if I say it enough times, Supercell will nerf this card. I hate the recruits. Please nerf them. I hate them. They're way too good right now. Royal Hogs, I think it's another really good. Honestly, I'm throwing into S tier as well. It's another really, really good win condition that is very annoying to deal with if you don't have the proper defense and the proper cards to deal with it. I think it's another archetype like the recruits and the hogs where you can split lane them both and whatever. I think it's just another one of those like win condition / deck archetypes that just need looking at. The split lane potential for them is so annoying. I hate the hogs. I hate the recruits because they're both very good and in a very good spot. Goblin Giant. Honestly, it's another one of those win conditions I'm not in love with. I'm gonna put it honestly into D tier, which might be a little bit controversial, but you see Goblin Giant Sparky get used, and even like Goblin Giant P.E.K.K.A, but like even the Goblin Giant itself, I feel like it gets countered very easily a lot of the time. The evolution really isn't the best, and I don't know, man. I've never really been the biggest fan of the Goblin Giant since it came out, and it's, yeah, I think even with the Royal Chef buff, it's still just not that good, honestly. E-Drag, I'll put into C. Like, there are decks that use it. You see it in Eagle, and you see it in some Lava Hound decks, but it's just not as strong as it used to be. I think it's kind of in the same boat as the Baby Dragon in that sense, where it gets taken out by a lot of different spells, and it's sometimes hard to get value, but in certain decks, if you're going up against a player that doesn't have a big spell, it can be good. But there are certain cards I think have fallen out of the meta, and that's one of them, because of other cards that have kind of taken its place. Ram Rider, I'm going to put it into B. I think it can be a very good win condition, and it does get used in like bridge spam decks with the P.E.K.K.A routinely, but I think there's better win conditions at the moment. If you're going to use a 5 elixir card that can get some high pressure, I think you use the Royal Hogs instead of the Ram Rider, but there are certain cards and certain decks that can get paired up with it that make this thing really, really good and can almost guarantee you damage a lot of the time. So yeah, Ram Rider, very solid. I think the Wall Breaker's in a really good spot in the meta. I'm going to put them in A. I think it's sometimes if you don't have if you split lane them, and like there's certain players that just don't have cards that can deal with split lane wall breakers, you're guaranteed a lot of damage a lot of the times. And for 2 elixir, it's hard. You can't really go wrong. I think it's a really solid like kind of mini win condition. Earthquake, I'm gonna put at A. I want to put it into S, but bro, the Earthquake I think is in a really good spot when it comes to spells. You only see it in Hog EQ and Royal Hogs EQ, but I think Earthquake is just in, like I said, a really good spot, especially with the Goblin Hut being very good. However, the Earthquake isn't really the best against the Goblin Hut in general, and so you kind of, like, in order to get a lot of value out of the Earthquake, you have to go up against cards like the Bomb Tower, like the Inferno Tower, or any other like buildings that you can kind of get a positive elixir trade out of and force your opponent to play something else. But I think the EQ is really, really good in those top decks with the Hog Rider and the Royal Hogs, and for that I really want to put it into S tier. However, I just don't think it's as versatile as the Fireball or the Lightning or the Log, which are those cards that are in S tier. So yeah, we'll throw it in A, because is really good in certain archetypes, but only found in a couple different ones. Goblin Cage, another really good card. Man, I still got so many cards to do. Holy crap, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 28. We still have like 31 more cards left because I really want to do the Crown Towers as well, so that's crazy. Let's just kind of quick fire like 10 right here. Goblin Cage, I want to go. I think it has a really good evolution, but I'm gonna give it a B tier, solid Evo. But like the card itself is also still really good. Fisherman, I'll give honestly like an A, very good in RG decks and other decks as well. Actually, no, I'm gonna give it an S tier. You can get King Tower activation off of it. It slows things down. It's very good. Like I said, RG with those main cards. All the cards are just in really good spots, and it's very good. Elixir Golem, I'm gonna give a C tier. Like, I think certain E-Golem players are really, really good with it, but I just don't think the E-Golem is in a great spot in the meta at the moment. And yeah, it can either win you the game or cost you severely. Battle Healer, I'll put in D. It used to get used in E-Golem a lot, but I don't know. You don't really see it too often. E-Golem tends to stray away from the Battle Healer now, and it uses other stuff to replace it. Firecracker, I'm gonna give it an A. Like, you can get King Tower activation off it pretty easily. However, it's still, I think the trade-off for using this card is really worth it. It's a very annoying card to deal with and very, very good. Delivery, I'm gonna give a C. You really only use it in Royal Hogs, and that's about it. Pretty good in Royal Hogs, but there are other spells that get the job done a little better. Skelly Drags, I'm putting in D. Never see these too often anymore, and yeah, I don't know. It used to get used a lot, but not really anymore. E-Spirit, I'm gonna put in A. I think it's on par with the Skellies. However, you can't get King Tower activation off it. I rather the Ice Spirit, but the E-Spirit has kind of been revived a little bit. You do see it every now and then instead of the Ice Spirit. E-Giant, I might put in B as well, as a good win condition, but not an amazing one. You do see, like, I've seen it get paired up with the Golden Knight a little bit recently, and it can be good along with the Tornado, but there are other win conditions that I think are better. Mother Witch, I'll put in C. Can either get a lot of value out of your opponent or none at all. It's very hit or miss, the Mother Witch, and for that, I think it's either C or maybe even like a D tier, but we'll keep it in C. Goblin Drill, I think, is an A tier win condition. I'd like to throw it in S, but there are times where if your opponent has the right counter for the Goblin Drill, it can be pretty difficult to get damage with, and so, I don't know, I think it's still very solid, and you can get tricky with the placements of the Goblin Drill, but we'll keep it in A. I think there are some better win conditions. And now we're on to the champions. Oh wait, actually no, let's do all the regular cards first, and then we'll get to the champions last. There we go. Okay, still there we go. Okay, Void, I think is like honestly, that's like, I think gonna be one of our first. Oh, actually no, we do have the Freeze and D tier, but yeah, the Void I think is a D tier spell. Even after the buff it got not too long ago, it's hard to get value out of this thing. It's not very good. Berserker, I'll give a D tier as well. Dude, this card has not been good since it's released, and it did get buffed recently, but I still don't think it's very good. It's a 2-elixir tank, but if you're gonna use a 2-elixir tank, I think you use the Ice Golem. It's a weird card. Goblin Demolisher, I'll give this another C tier. Honestly, I'm considering D, but there are certain decks that work quite well with it, and I kind of like the Goblin Demolisher a gets countered pretty easily. Don't really see the bush get used too often. Last but not least, the Phoenix I'll put in B tier. I think it's on par with a lot of these B tier cards and can be very, very solid in a lot of different decks. You see it get paired up with the E Giant, and like other beat down decks with the regular Giant stuff. Even I've seen it with the Goblin Drill. So yeah, I think it's a pretty fun air unit. I really like the Phoenix a lot, actually. So those are the regular cards. Let's get into the champions. There's only a few champions and even like crown towers. Let's do the crown towers first. Princess, I'm gonna put it S. I think it's just the best crown tower, most well-rounded. You can never go wrong with the Princess Tower. If you, when in doubt, Princess Tower it out. It's the best one for sure. Cannoneer. Actually, okay, now let's do Royal Chef first. Royal Chef, I'll put in C. It's, I think after the buff, it's a little bit better, but it's still just not the greatest, honestly. Yeah, I think, honestly, yeah, I think it's just not the greatest. I think it's probably the worst crown tower out of the four, because it can be hard to get value. Next we'll do Cannoneer. I'll put Cannoneer at B, and then Dagger Duchess adds A. Do I want to keep it like that? Nah, actually I'm going to switch it around. Cannoneer at A and Dagger Duchess at B, since the nerf Dagger Duchess has not been used as much. Well, the Cannoneer does get used, I think, a little bit more than the Dagger Duchess. It's very good against beat down, very good against some other decks as well. Obviously struggles in bait decks where the Dagger Duchess shines, but I think beat down is getting used a little bit more, and even like cards like the Hog, it's really good against. So yeah, I think I like this order. I think if I were to use them in order, it'd definitely be Royal Chef at the bottom, then Dagger Duchess, then Cannoneer, and then the Princess Tower. So those are the crown towers done. And now we get to go to the champions. The Golden Knight is the first one we'll start off with. I think after the buff, I think it's like an A tier champion. I wouldn't quite call it S tier. I think it's still very, very good, but after the buff it's definitely used in a lot more decks. You see it in different archetypes like the Hog Rider, Goblin Drill. Don't really see it too much in beatdown. It's more like fast-paced decks, along with the Goblin Hut that's very solid. And so I think the buff definitely revitalized this card. Before the buff, it was like an F tier champion. It was the worst champion by far. But oh, I accidentally clicked the mouse wheel. But where did I put it? There we go. I think it's an A tier champ. Very, very good card, man. Very good card. Archer Queen, I'm honestly gonna put it in S tier. It's super hard to deal with this card a lot of the times, and honestly, unless you have a lightning or a rocket, like, good luck. The ability makes this card super difficult to deal with, and in Goblin Drill and Royal Hogs, and even sometimes paired up with the RG and the Hog Rider, the Archer Queen is a very, very difficult card to deal with and just very annoying. It's a complete nuisance. Skeleton King, honestly, I think has seen better days. I'll put it in C. Like, you see it get used in bait type decks, and even paired along with the Mortar, and I think it has its place even in Eagle. Actually, I'm gonna put it in B because there are quite a few decks that do use the Skeleton King, but I think there are better champions in the game at the moment that are a lot more broken than the Skeleton King. Mighty Miner are also thrown to A. It's another really good champ that gets a lot of value a lot of the time, and is used in a few different archetypes, and I think it's just a good card in general. Great against beatdown, and very versatile with the bomb exploding, being able to switch lanes at a moment's notice. The Monk, let's put it into S tier, bro. It's, I think, one of the best. Like, you'll notice we have a lot of cards in that Royal Giant deck all at S tier because I think it's the best deck in the game. The Royal Giant, the Monk, the Fisherman, and the Hunter all paired together. Those four cards, unstoppable against a lot of different decks. The Monk in front of the Royal Giant, supported by an Evo Hunter. Good luck, man. That's the game. The Monk is in a really good spot. I think it's for sure one of the better champs in the game. Little Prince, on the other hand, I think is the worst champion in the game. You're only seeing people use the Little Prince since this card was released. It has been super strong. I think it still kind of needs a nerf, and yeah, it's ridiculous. The boss bandit can just get you some damage that you just do not deserve at times because of how good of a card it is and how tanky it is. And yeah, man, it's a pest. It's another one of those pest cards that will just get that one last dash to get a ton of damage, even if it's on 1 HP. But that took a while. There is the tier list for the every single Clash Royale card in the game. If you want to check out a tier list that I did on all the evolutions, you know what? I don't really do this often, but click on the screen now. It'll be up on the screen along with another, video that the algorithm thinks you're gonna like from me. But either way, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I don't do tier lists often, but they are fun to do every now and then. So let me know if you guys agree or disagree with a lot of these picks. If you liked it, leave a like, hit subscribe.